set for the cars to head off onto their formation lap as they head off the grid now to head around. Let's take you through where they're set to start for this morning's first race. So, on pole position by quite a margin, by 7/10 of a second, was Jack Harding. So Jack's certainly back on top form when he starts on pole position. As we mentioned, James Cousins will start on the second alongside him, second on the grid on the front row. The second row is current defending champion and points leader Samuel Smith, and John Langer is the former Mark 1 champion alongside him on the second row of the grid. Then it's Richard Amos, who had a nightmare weekend at Anglesey, only scoring 1 point, but he's the top qualifying club class driver, starting 5th. Alongside him on the third row is Braden Fletcher, improving all the time in his Paddock Motorsport run car. And then Adam Bezel, who missed Anglesey, but I've been told it could be in top form here this weekend, starting 7th alongside Kevin Sylvain, who is the current club class points leader. Onto row 5, where we see Will Blackwood Chambers, who had a storming drive at Anglesey, which we'll talk about in a bit. He starts 9th alongside Patrick Fletcher, who again has work to do from that top 10 spot. Then James Warrior and Luke Whitworth start on the 6th row of the grid alongside Simon Baldwin, who makes a return after he missed Anglesey. Alongside him is Martin Canning on the 7th row of the grid, and then Alex Miller and Simon Fleet round out row 8. Moving on to row 9, we have Nick Rutter and Martin Tolley, further back than he'd like to be, back in 18th on the grid. Declan Lee, again, another one who's high up in the points, who didn't have a great qualifying session. He's on the 10th row alongside Clive Powles. Tom Selden and Lee Britton come next from Alex Osborne and Matt Pitford starting 24th on the grid. Further back onto row 13, we have Xavier Brooke and George Grant, followed by Christopher Richardson and Stephen New. Then it's Will Morris and Scott Wright from Andrew Flynn and Seamus Haney. Then Bruce Robinson and Clive Chisnell, Liz Walton and Kevin Brent, Marcus Carlton and Duncan Harris, and Ivor Mayers at the back of the grid. What is a whopping 39 car entry for today's 3 races in the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. So the cars, of course, making their way around on the formation lap on this 300 circuit. There is more rain scheduled at some point today, but at the moment it's nice and dry and warm, and even the sun's making an appearance. It's some 19 degrees, but I look at my laptop on the weather on my bar and it just says 19 degrees, rain coming. So I think there is rain later on this afternoon, but when it'll hit, I guess depends whenever the clouds that are hovering above Snetterton here as the sun peeks through wants to break at any point. So we'll have to keep an eye to see when that may well do so. So just to explain them, as I mentioned, for the class structure in the MX-5 Super Cup, there are 2 classes. There is a pro class for the fastest drivers in the championship. That's the likes of Sam Smith, Jack Harding, Patrick Fletcher, and everyone else that's towards the top of their respective points, and usually the front of the grid. You then have the club class, which is a legacy of what used to run as the Mazda MX-5 Super Series, when the MX-5 paddock was broken up into 2 series, when the MX-5 Super Cup was part of the TCR UK package a couple of seasons ago, and then the MX-5 Super Series remained with the Mark 1 MX-5 Championship for a while for those who still wanted to race a Mark 3 in the same paddock. That then got brought together back once again into one grid back in 2020, last year, and then the pro and club classes were then born as a result of that. And then we also, on top of that, have an overarching Masters point structure, which is for drivers aged 45 and over. We should even mention who's leading that, actually. And I believe, despite missing Anglesey, with the drop scores coming into play, it is Simon Baldwin who leads that with 600 points, 9 ahead of Martin Tolley. And then Clive Powles, who is the top-placed club class driver in that Masters points table, is third with 579. Let's also give a shout to the club class points as we came into the weekend. So Kevin Sylvain leads then. He is on the screen. You just seen behind Braden Fletcher's car, the 4th car on the right, which is the green, white and black car you can see just on the right hand side of the screen, is leading the way with 594 points on drop scores, 588 points for Clive Powles second, and then it's Richard Amos who has those drop scores to saving grace in many ways on 580. He had an incident in the first race where he collected Nick Dunn up at the Rocket Complex after he lost his brakes and ran wide onto the grass. Then had got the fastest lap in the class, but retired from the second race, and then again retired from race 3. So lots of effort to make up, but he starts 5th on the grid overall, so plenty of chance for him to claim some valuable points back. So the last few cars are in position. Ivor Mayers puts his car in 39th position. The green flag is at the back. Stand by for action. The first MX-5 Super Cup race of the day here at Snetterton, with Harding and Cousins on the front row of the grid. But watch for Sam Smith and Patrick Fletcher from 3rd and 10th back in the pack. Here we go. Race number 1's underway as they start to squirm and find their own piece of racing room down towards turn 1 for the first time. They're 2, 3, even 4 abreast on the run down towards Riches, and it's side by side for the lead. Jack Harding on the inside with James Cousins looking towards the outside line as they pour into the first corner for that first lap. Everyone's trying to find their own little piece of room. Hopefully there's no contact. Nice and steady, nice and even for everyone so far. Everyone's got through, it seems as though, trouble-free. Now down towards Wilson for the first time, and they're still side by side for the lead. But there goes Sam Smith up the inside of James Cousins as he puts 2 wheels onto the grass. And now they sprint down towards Palmer's for the first time. They're still side by side. Smith will try and go around the long way around on the outside, but James Cousins fights back. He's got quite a machine under him. That's the car that Aidan Hills used to run himself and race in the championship, and was a multiple-time race winner and championship contender. But from 2020, that came into the hands of James Cousins, and now he has the responsibility of driving that car towards the front, and he's holding off the defending champion. James Cousins is not allowing himself to be intimidated by Sam Smith at this point as they head out of Agostini for the first time. But the crucial thing is, as Matt Pickford goes off onto the grass, and I didn't realise MX-5s were lawnmowers, but Matt Pickford's turned his into one temporarily before he finds the grey stuff once again. It's James Cousins who's holding off the 2 BC Cars Motorsport prepared machines, the 2 identical cars, because the car behind Sam Smith is Richard Amos, who, believe it or not, is the top club class driver who has got the pace to pretty much match the pros at this point in time. And a fast start also. I said, Sam Smith told me in the assembly area this morning in qualifying to watch out for him. Adam Bessel with a fast start up to 5th position already, so plenty of chance for him to get himself at least onto the podium. But it's Jack Harding then, who has only 1 win so far this season, which he took at Silverstone. He's looking to try and get himself in the mix because he knows, because he'll be 7 points behind on drop scores, but every couple of points that he can take out of Sam Smith is crucial. And the fact that he's got to get his car between himself and Sam Smith at this early stage is critical, because he knows he's got to try and pick up as many points as he can. If he's able to take the win and the fastest lap, and Sam Smith can't get as high as 3rd, he's pretty much made up about 5 or 6 points back already, so on drop score. So that will certainly help him as the weekend goes on. And once this weekend's finished, we are into the second half of the season where those championship contenders really know that every single result counts, and every point that you score has to be one that matters. So that's the first lap then, and it is Jack Harding who leads the way. And while James Cousins is in 2nd place, he might not stay there for long, because Sam Smith was all over his rear bumper on the sprint down towards Ritchie's for the 2nd time at racing speeds. So Harding leads then, Cousins in 2nd place, Smith in 3rd, Amos leads the club class in 4th place, Adam Bezel is 5th, and John Langridge. It's then the Fletchers. It's Braden ahead of Patrick, not related. It's Braden Fletcher from Patrick Fletcher, while Blackwell Chambers is still 9th, and Kevin Sylvain has dropped to 10th position off the grid, and he is currently sat in 10th, 2nd place in club class. Luke Whitworth is 3rd in that category as well, and he's back in currently in 12th overall. Get the biggest losers and gainers. The biggest loser of positions from that race, for that start, was Declan Lee, because it looks as though he hasn't come through at the end of the first lap. Whether he had a spin or a mechanical issue that's dropped in towards the tail of the field, I'm not 100%, but problems for Declan Lee then. that will be a score that will have to count, I'm sure, in one of his dropped rounds when we finish this weekend. The biggest gainer on that first lap was the 117 of Will Morris. He came up 10 spots from where he started from 29th on the grid up to 19th. So he's made up quite a few places now. He's broken into the top 20, and we'll see if he's got the pace to climb even further. This is Patrick Fletcher, who comes into the weekend 3rd in points, but this won't be helping his course too much. I think he has just got past Will Blackwell Chambers. No, sorry, he's being under attack from Will Blackwell Chambers in car 18. Now, Will Blackwell Chambers at Anglesey was a sensation in the 3rd race, because he pretty much, I think, picked the right set of tyres for the occasion, because you're only allowed 5 sets throughout the whole year in the MX-5 Super Cup. So he really did pick his tyres spot on, and that really did help him to put in an incredible drive from 32nd on the grid in Anglesey up to almost a podium finish. He came 4th, but he was right on the tail of the top 3 in that race, and so he's someone who, as a former double Mark 1 MX-5 champion in the BRSCC paddock, knows what it takes to win and be quick. There's car number 419, that is Martin Canning. Martin at the moment is currently sat in 17th, chasing Simon Fleet and Martin Tolley, his teammate and team boss. As Sam Smith just gives a tiny little love tap to the back of James Cousins' car, just to remind him, I'm still here, I'm still the champion as well, so just haven't got away too yet. Jack Harding, who will know he has to take every result he can, gets the encouragement from no less his old rival Luke Herbert, because for those who don't know, he was going to run with Paddock Motorsport this year. He used to run with the AK Motorsport team, which was run by Fraser Kane. But that team has now moved on to predominantly racing Ginettas, but they have been a long-standing team in MX-5s before, and been a former champion with Alan Henderson back in 2015. But he was going to run with Paddock Motorsport, Jack Harding, but at the last minute made a switch to, of all teams, Luke Herbert Racing. Now, for those who know MX-5 Super Cup, there was a point when they raced against each other, Luke and Jack didn't really get on in many cases when they were battling for the championship, but they seem to have put all that aside, and they've now become basically, well, a team boss and team driver. So Jack Harding now is getting advice from the man he used to call his main rival. And at the moment, it seems as though it's pretty much working, because Jack is certainly finding himself not just to his old self of being towards the front, but using all of that to lead the race here and take full advantage of the fact that he was 0.7 of a second quicker in qualifying. Sometimes qualifying can be one matter, the race can be totally another. At the moment, it's still living up with Jack Harding leading from pole position, but under threat from both James Cousins and from Sam Smith. And it's impressive that James is keeping Sam Smith at bay here, and Jack will know that essentially every lap he keeps him at bay is a better chance for him to try and take more points away. So if he does carry on and hold on to that position, it will be... I think what's interesting, I was looking here, is that no one has actually, so far this season, both taken pole position and then also the fastest lap in the first race, because you only get the pole position point for the time that you set in qualifying, not for anything from starting the race from race 2 or race 3 from pole position. There's Nick Rutter getting shuffled out by the 177. That was also with Clive Powell, who's one of the top drivers in the club class. He's second in points coming into the weekend, but he's at the head of this big gaggle of cars that are scrapping amongst each other. And I think in there I can see Declan Lee in the dark green car in there. Matt Pitford's in there too, and everyone's trying to dive and scrabble for positions as they turn in. Oh dear, that's Lee Britton's car in the pit lane. That's one of the Luke Herbert racing cars. So whilst one car leads the way, one of his 2 new drivers for this season is in the pit lane with problems. And that looks as though that car's been punched in the right rear quarter by somebody. By who? We're not quite sure, but whoever it was, might be carrying some damage as a result of that. So I think Luke is just there on the left-hand side, you can see, just looking underneath the car, watching as one of his mechanics works away at that one. Car was very sideways there going through the left hand. That was the 177 of Will Morris. Now he's the one that made that big charge up the order from what was 29th on the grid up to 19th, but he's dropped back on the last lap to 22nd, and let's see where he is as he comes across the line again. And Xavier Brook leading the way. Also another car in the pit lane as well. I can't quite catch who it is, but I'll be able to see on the timing screen who's also pitted, and that is Seamus Haney as well. So Seamus Haney with problems in car 77. He's out of the, he looks like he's at the moment out of the race or out of the running at this point in time. Quick check-in with the leaders, so it's still Jack Harding who leads the way then by 0.6 of a second from James Cousins. Does Xavier Brook outbrakes himself and lets Chris Richardson go through as a result. Good scrap there between George Grant as he makes Will Morris turn out of the corner, but he didn't expect to see the Clapham North and Danforth Radio sponsored car to his outside. And again, George Grant in his Rob Boston prepared machine tried to stick it round the outside at Palmer's, which he tried to, but didn't quite work, and so he's had to slot back in behind. Now, you can see Xavier Brook here in the black, gold and red machine was battling over Chris Richardson. He's trying to get past him, but there's a big gaggle of cars in the mix between Clive Powell and the recovering Declan Lee. So that puts Declan, when he came across the line, he was towards the back of the field at the end of that one, unless there's a transponder problem. He's currently sat in, it says 37th, but that's not quite right. I think his transponder's got to catch up, but he's now scrapping away with Xavier Brook, and that's the battle that's going on for, if I look through my timing screen, that's car 70. Car 70 at the moment is sat in, I should be able to see it, but for some reason it's not showing up on my screen. So he's in the mix with Clive Powell anyway, so he's gone past him. Will Morris gets a good run as I think Xavier Brook got a bit held up there as he tried to come onto the back straight, trying to let Declan Lee complete his move. Clive Powell's also being pressured by Chris Richardson, and I think even that's a flash of the headlights, which for these cars they have covered headlights, so it doesn't really quite work. I think some of those drivers forget that when they try and flash the headlights and realise, oh wait, that's not really going to work because I have no headlights. A couple of cars still do, but most of these cars do have headlight covers on them to make it a bit more aerodynamic and also to save a bit of weight. One or two cars do still carry headlights in order to use them particularly in adverse conditions. Off the road has gone James Warrior, and that looks as though I think possibly that not all's well with that car. I think it's crabbing on the left rear. You can see the suspension is quite awry in that left rear corner, and he had to be careful to pull it on the grass because the charging pack behind have come through. Now James, when he came through, what position was he in when he came across the line? James Warrior was in 10th position when it last time by, so he was battling around Alex Miller, Luke with Simon Baldwin territory. So I wonder if he certainly had some contact somewhere, because that right rear is not quite right on that machine. Here comes Declan Lee with a dive up the inside of Clive Powell's, and there's damage to the... That's interesting. So the rear bumper is hanging off, or part of the rear bumper is hanging off Clive Powell's car. So I think he's had a hit from somebody in the rear, and he was battling away with Chris Richardson. So James Murray's car has come to a halt. You can see it just on the exit of Murray's as they come down on the pit straight. As they make their way through, there we can see more battles going on. 73 there is the BC Cars Motorsport prepared machine of Alex Osborne in the club class. He's currently sat in class at the moment in 5th. He's got some work to do. Xavier Brooks there in car 70. There's lots of midfield battles here going on. It's quite a lot to try and keep up with here. You've got in this little pack here Matt Pickford in the number 16. You've got Alex Brook in the 70. Alex Osborne in the 73 car. And just behind them, you've got George Wright in the 69. And then you've also got Tom Selden, who, if that car looks a little familiar to some who are MX-5 Super Cup fans, that is the ex-champ, double champ, triple championship winning Mazda MX-5 Mark III of Luke Herbert. So that car is back out racing again, but it's not with Luke at the wheel. He's in fact now with Tom Selden, who's one of the 2 new drivers that Luke has taken on in his first full season of running his own team, because he had ambitions after he won the championship 3 times to start running cars of his own, and he has now decided to do that. And of course he's got a 3-strong squad with Tom Selden, Lee Britton, and of course the current race leader Jack Harding, who is still at the top of the field. We have had a change for second place at the front because Sam Smith is in front of James Cousins now, so switch on for second between them. And Sam Smith has also set the fastest lap of the race, and they were about a quarter of a second between each other at the end of that previous lap. So we might want to take a look at our leaders very shortly. There is Clive Powles with, he almost got a bit of a help there from Chris Richardson as he went through. Now those two were quite close together a couple of laps ago. I don't want to suggest anything, but there's a bit of bad blood between these two, I'm not sure, but they are side by side as they come in through Coram. There goes Declan Liebers with Will Morris between him, side by side, and around the outside goes Chris Richardson. Tries to make the corner, which he does. Over the curbs goes Clive Powles. Nick Rutter's in the mix as well in car 99, the orange car behind them. So watch for them as they come down the pit straight. It's hard to kind of pull away from this because there's so much going on in the mid-pack. You're not quite sure where to look. This is one of the closest battles that we have. And across the line, once again, I think we should check in with our leaders shortly, because Jack Harding and Sam Smith are only 0.1 of a second between each other. So I suspect there's a battle going on between the leaders. They're still raging the scrap that goes on between the battle between Chris Richardson, Clive Powles and Nick Rutter. 17th to 19th positions this is. Richardson goes very wide on the apex of, or not even on the apex, completely misses it and runs deep into the corner. And both Clive Powles and I suspect Will Morris have both slotted back through Nick Rutter into position. I can hear the circuit commentator going crazy in the back, so I'm not sure something's happening with the leaders. I think we really should check in with the leaders shortly, because Harding and Smith are quite close on track, and I think given the fact they're a tenth of a second behind, is something we need to take a look at. Still battling here is Chris Richardson with Matt Pickford. Nick Rutter and Xavier Brooke are also in the mix too as well, so there goes Rutter up the inside of Pickford. They're still battling away towards the bottom of the top 20. Still got 7 minutes to go. So as we watch on with our leader, watch on with the pack here as they turn their way through Hamilton. Now here's our leaders right now then. So there has been a change, but where's Jack Harding gone to? Jack Harding disappeared, and now it's a battle on for the lead between Sam Smith and James Cousins. So while we're watching that battle, I thought I heard the circuit commentator Adam Weller getting very excited. I think something may have happened between Sam Smith and Jack Harding. So it's now closed up to 3 for the lead. It's now Sam Smith who leads the way then. Second place for James Cousins, a third for Adam Bezel, 4th for Braden Fletcher, and 5th for John Langridge. So a change between the top 5, but the key thing is we've lost Jack Harding. So Jack Harding has gone either off the road or, dare I say it, has there been some contact between the leaders. Either way, it's a change on for the leaders and also a battle on for the lead, because James Cousins has 1 win to his credit this year so far after he won race 3 at Croft. Can he possibly take one that isn't a reverse grid result? Because he did that in the reverse grid. Take nothing from it at all, of course, because it was a brilliant drive in that 3rd race to pick up the win. And also, could Adam Bessel get a first victory? Oh, off the road's gone Nick Rutter. Now I suspect that's possibly a legacy of what was going on with the pack that we saw before we switched to our leaders. Off the road he goes. There's James Warrier's car, which is still at the side of the road, which is out of the race. So that car continuing on. So just wait and see where our leaders have got to. Right, here they are, exiting through Palmer's. So still Smith then from Cousins in 2nd place, Bezel in 3rd, and it's 4th place now, as we say, for Fletcher. Now looking for where Harding is. Has he even come through in that last lap? And the answer is, did he come through on that last lap? He did, but he was back in 15th. So whatever happened to Jack has seen him tumble down the order right into the depths of the top 20. So that really wasn't a result which Jack would. Now, the comfort for him is, of course, he can use that as a drop if it's a drop round, if it's one of his worst results, because so far the worst result that he's had so far this year was 5th position. That was at the second race at Silverstone. So this would be ultimately his worst result. So essentially he will drop this result straight away, and he will essentially end this on drop scores. He'll essentially end this one back in 593 points. So it'll be whatever points he can pick up, and those 92 points will certainly still count towards his. Well, he'll get those few more points back, because he'll get some, depending on where he is, he'll get a few more points back in order to stay with them. Now, there's yellow flags on the approach to Brundle Nelson, but then there was a green flag right on the exit, so I'm not quite sure what that was all about. Running wide on the exit of Nelson there is Braden Fletcher. John Langridge there moves up into 4th position, so that's a move up for him, and Fletcher will try and get him back as they come through Corwin up through Murray's. Now, in terms of the time that we've got left, we have, I'll try and reset my timing screen for a second to see how long we've got. 4 minutes to go then, so this will be roughly around about 2 more laps on the one we're about to start here. So battles on for the lead and for 4th position, as they can now come onto the pit straight for the penultimate time. Richard Amos has fallen backwards, of course, as we say, to 6th place, while Blackwell Chambers holding on to 7th. Kevin Sylvain is 8th, Luke Whitworth is 9th, and into 10th place is Alex Miller. So good strong run from Alex, actually. 7th in the pro class and 10th overall. It's a nice run for him at this moment in time. Battle still continues between John Langridge and Braden Fletcher over that 4th and 5th position. Langridge taking that inside line to go defensive as they turn out through the Wilson hairpin. And now on towards Palmer's, named after Dr. Jonathan Palmer, of course, the man who's not just who owns the entire Motorsport Vision collective, and of course all the circuits that they control as well, including Snetterton. Oh, big sideways moment there for Adam Bezel off the corner. Well, whatever happened between Smith and Harding, it hasn't seemed to affect Smith's pace, because he's held on to the lead and started pulling away from James Cousins. And in 3rd place then is Adam Bezel, who again is looking for one of his best results. His best results so far, if I look at where he is in points coming to the weekend, he was quite further down. His best result so far has been a 2nd place, and that was in the first Silverstone race. So that's his best result so far. If he manages to get past James, he'll equal that. If not, he'll pick up a 3rd, which will certainly add towards his points tally. But big drama for Jack Harding then, who, let's look at where he was at the end of that lap, because he was, as we say, 15th at the end of a lap after he had that incident. He's now back up to 11th, and he's lapping at least 2 seconds quicker than everyone else in front of him. So his next targets to try and get around are going to be a bit of a pack between Kevin Sylvain, Luke Whitworth and Alex Miller and Simon Baldwin. If you can get past all 3 of them in the next lap and a half or so, all 4 of them, excuse me, you can get yourself up to as high as 7th place, which might well be a bit more damage limitation. Oh, big sideways moment for James Cousins, under brakes to Nelson, and up the inside goes Adam Bezel on the exit, and that was easy as pie, that was. Thank you very much. And that's a change between teammates, of course, because James Cousins, who is still sideways through the bomb hole. This is MX5 racing, not rallycross, James. You can keep it in a straight line, but those two nose to tail now as the teammates change places. But Sam Smith then is on course potentially, not only to possibly take another Grand Slam, as Adam Bezel again was getting out of shape into the final corner, and with rightly so, he goes off right onto the circuit. And just as James Cousins did 2 corners ago, James Cousins looks across and says, "Remember me?" They look at each other down the pit straight. That was extraordinary. So last lap ball goes out. That was quite funny, that moment there. Hills Motorsport cars 2nd, 3rd and 4th. James Cousins is weaving around in front of Adam Bezel, saying, right, is it my turn to go sideways? In through Ritchie's. 2nd then for Cousins. 3rd for Bezel. He goes wide again. And again for John Langridge. As Aidan Hill set his car up to drift rather than to grip on a circuit, because they are quite lively rear ends on these cars, but they're certainly having fun out there in 2nd, 3rd and 4th. So Cousins 2nd, Bezel 3rd, Langridge 4th, and Braden Fletcher, who continues to improve. Ever since he debuted in the championship last year, he's continued to get quicker and quicker in the past 18 months or so, and he really has been one of the having his best season to date, I think, in any championship so far this year in the MX5 Super Cup. Started 10th in 2020, but all the work he's done to get quicker and the advice he's had from Martin Plowman and Kelvin Fletcher and everyone else involved, he is up in the mix, and he hasn't yet scored a podium in the MX5 Super Cup, at least not to my knowledge. So he's in the mix there. If something happens to any of these 3 cars in front that are all running for the same team, then there's a chance he could get himself in the mix here if something were to occur. But there's still half a lap to go, so while there's not long left in this lap, there's also still every chance that there could be a change on somewhere. If all it takes is James Cousins to just turn a bit too early or just get the tail out a bit too much and allow Bezel into the mix, and Langridge and Fletcher will try and take advantage as well. Now, one thing I should also point out is Patrick Fletcher as well, who he's not where I thought he'd be, because Patrick Fletcher, whilst that's been happening, has... Well, he's right towards the back. He's in 37th place, and he's 4 laps down. So he's obviously had problems, which has forced him into the pit lane as well, whilst we look at some of our midfield battles. But Samuel Smith, meanwhile, number 1's on his door for a reason, and he has been absolutely sailing away. He said the car felt good. All day, you said he wasn't quite sure of the pace of the car exactly, because we had so much rain yesterday and testing on and off. But really, in the dry conditions, this car is as quick as anything. He's as quick as he was at Anglesey, and as he turns his way in, well, we didn't catch it on camera, but whatever happened between, if anything, Harding and Smith, we'll have to find out in possibly the post-race interview. But for now, he can revel in the success as he heads out of Murray's onto the pit straight. It will be a 4th consecutive win on the bounce for reigning champion Sam Smith as he continues his charge for a 2nd defending title. Smith wins race 1 of the MX-5 Super Cup here at Snetterton today. A sprint to Beline for 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. It is 2nd for Cousins, 3rd for Adam Bezel. And on a charge to Beline, John Langridge just holds off Braden Fletcher for 4th and 5th position. Will Blackwell Chambers on his own in 6th position, but still a strong result for him in car 18. And the rest of the pack comes through. Now remember, Jack Harding was 11th going into that last lap. As they come across the line, it's going to be 7th for Whitworth, 8th for Sylvain, 9th for Alex Miller, and 10th, the top 10 for Jack Harding, and 11th for Patrick Fletcher. So Patrick Fletcher did get out. But he was in the pit lane, so he was several laps back, and he finishes down in 37th place. That will be a drop score as well. Across the line go the rest of our contenders. We should say for the record that the club class win didn't go to Richard Amos. So Richard Amos was one that also hit troubles. He pitted as well. So some of the championship contenders not having a great first race here this morning, but certainly got some work to do to get themselves back out for race number 2. Kevin Sylvain was... Luke Whitworth was the club class winner, from Kevin Sylvain in 2nd place. And there was Alex, then the 3rd place in club class is all the way down overall in 16th place. That was Clive Powell. Sprint to the line between, that was Nick Rutter and Clive Chisnell. And Nick Rutter got 25th place on the line by the mere margin of 24 thousandths of a second. So it wasn't quite much, but that would have been quite fun on the camera to watch that one to come through on the timing camera that we have on the side of the circuit set up by TSL, that manages to capture any photo finishes. So if there is in the case any instance where the winner can't be properly separated, at least on the timing stream, they can check the photo to make sure. There was something we had last week which saw the winning, I think it was the 2nd SCXR Challenge race. Originally it went to Michael Blackburn, but looking back on the camera, it went to Chris Grimes. So because he virtually being just having his nose ahead, so the win was declared the next day after they reviewed the camera, the photo finish camera on the side. There's a thumbs up for Sam Smith after that one, and I'm sure he'll be able to tell us exactly what happened. So actually, we'll be able to check out right now, because let's head down to Lindsay Close in the Park Fairway to find out how our top 3 found that race in our first MX-5 Super Cup race of the day here at Snetterton.
Sam, I know you've just come in, but I need to talk to you about that race.
Yeah, it was for sure. It's never ideal to see the main competitor end up how it did. I need to see the footage, see what happened. I was alongside into Hamilton. Jack was coming across no matter what, so I gave him room. And on the exit of the corner, I feel like he came across me, but it'll happen so fast. It's a bit early to say, really. I need to see the footage, but a bit disappointing. Great result. Car was great. Huge shout out to BC Cars for providing a really good car. But it's never ideal to see a competitor end the way it did, so that was far from intention from either of us, I'm sure, but I suppose we need to find out whose fault it was.
But obviously, race 2, that goes off your 2nd fastest qualifying time, so is there a game plan you already have?
Same again, you know, the speed in the car was good. We have a problem with the wheel bearing, which we're struggling to sort out, and it was getting worse and worse and worse, so we need to nail that, because it's making the car very difficult to turn through left-hand corners, so I'm confident we can get that, we can actually gain time again, so yeah, we'll be fine.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to seeing you this afternoon. Best of luck. Right, let's very quickly catch up with Adam, who came 3rd place here. Adam, quickly talk me through that race.
Yeah, started 7th because we had a cat failure in qualifying, so we managed to get 7th. But then, yeah, just caught up with these boys and tried to stay with them, really.
So, good fun out there overall?
Oh, yeah. Me and James had a right laugh then, because we're teammates as well, so we're always trying to not kill each other, so it's always a good laugh.
Yeah, that would come in helpful. I'm sure Aidan would not enjoy that. Brilliant. Well, let's speak to James, the man of the hour. You're gracing our podiums quite often these days, but I want to know about this race. I mean, 4 seconds ahead of Sam. 4 seconds behind Sam. Do you think you were going to catch him up at the end of it?
To be honest, we had the pace at the start of the race, but we kind of fell back towards the second half. So I think a little bit of tweaking on our setup and we should be right there. We definitely had the pace for the win at the beginning. We were just sort of, as it is with Snetterton, you just got to play your time and wait and see what happens. Obviously, there was a collision. Needed to optimise on that, but Sam, usually just has the outright pace, so he's the one to beat at the moment.
And how are you feeling with your teammate being right behind you?
Yeah, it was good. Hopefully the camera caught some of that, but yeah, there's lots of sideways action, a couple of overtakes, a few bits of bumping, bit of fun. But yeah, it's probably the best fun I've had all year racing against someone so far, so hopefully we'll do more next race.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to it.